Welcome back to The Grind. In this video, we are going to talk about how to defeat the Nameless Collector, the boss of the Abyss of Legends. If you have not seen, I do have a playlist on the Abyss, which has some helpful videos as far as how to prepare for it and certain fights along the way. So this fight changes a little bit throughout the fight, depending on the health that the Nameless Collector has. Now, Aegon is an incredible champion for this fight. I think viewed by the majority of players as the best for this fight, especially because you can get him fully ramped up, so he's dealing tons of damage and goes unblockable and all of that. But you can see his special attacks, or in the Abyss, special attacks are able to stun you, and so you do want to be very careful. And his special one is difficult to impossible to evade, so you will have to block it, and for the most part you'll have to block parts of the special 2 as well, so you will want to have enough health to take block damage. So this is one of the fights where you will want to heal yourself up. So this is the special 2. What I find useful: dash back at the start, block the first 2 hits, and then dash back again right after. So that middle part of the attack has several hits. If you wait for the second damage number to pop up and then dash back twice in a row, you will be able to evade a majority of the hits and save yourself some block damage. But again, this is one of the fights where you are going to want to actually heal your champion up, maybe not all the way to full health, but at least close to full health, so that you can survive longer with all of that block damage. And while Aegon may be the best champion for this fight, you can use other champions. Some will handle the fight better than others, because there are a lot of unstoppable effects in this fight if you do not have Aegon or a way to nullify or slow, which can make the fight very annoying. Dr. Doom was one of the few that I had that actually I felt was able to handle this fight fairly decently, and I believe I took 6% off in this fight, which isn't ideal, but I did make several mistakes that resulted in me dying early. So I feel like with Dr. Doom, you could do some significant damage against the Collector and not overspend a ridiculous amount on this fight, but being able to put him in the Doom cycle and control the power so well and not have to worry about the special 1s or pushing him to a special 3 does have a lot of benefits. So at this point, I've already triggered the safety net from Heimdall synergy, so I just go in to do as much damage as I can, get off a couple heavy attacks, but of course he throws a special 3 and then I die. So with the rest of the fights are going to be with Aegon, and we're going to break down how this fight works. At different health thresholds, he triggers a buff and at the same time a time warp, which is a debuff on you, a passive debuff that when it expires deals 50% of your current health as damage. And then if you knock him down, you can remove that damaging passive debuff. Now the buff that he gets at 85% is health protection, so you no longer takes more than 1% of his max health as damage from a single source. If this damage cap is hit, the Collector becomes unstoppable for 5 seconds, and this has a 10-second cooldown. Now the great thing about Aegon is he has the ability accuracy reduction. So when you hit that 1% cap, if you hit it, then you will not necessarily trigger that protection and that unstoppable buff because of that ability accuracy reduction, making Aegon a great champion for this fight. Because of Nameless Collector's high health pool, a lot of champions likely won't really be hitting that damage cap, so they might not have to worry about it. But if you do, having that unstoppable pop up frequently would make this fight very annoying if you have no way to deal with it. Other great benefits to Aegon is that you can charge your heavy and go unstoppable and save your combo meter, so that you can then allow him to attack into you and then get those 6 Furies built up. Like you see here, when I accidentally got hit by that special attack, you get those Furies and you'd start to deal a ton of damage. And if you can chain on a special 2 into that damage, you can get some serious damage, especially off that bleed at the end. And again, here you see at the start of the fight, because of the protection and those other buffs are triggered, you get that time warp. So you want to try to start the fight with a heavy attack. You'll go unblockable, and if he attacks into you, you'll then knock him down. But you can see he avoided it. And while at 70%, which you can see he's at now, the Collector gains a permanent boost to critical hit rating and armor rating equal to 2,250. So this doesn't really complicate the fight too much. Now you can see that Time Warp is about to expire, and I took a bunch of health as damage. It was 50% of my current health. So this time warp is triggered at the start of a fight, as well as any time he activates a new one of these, what they're called fractures, which is a buff when he crosses these health thresholds. And if he does not have 1 bar of power, he will gain 1 bar of power. And in combination with that evade, ended up being very poor for me because he was able to evade and then throw that special 1 and stun me. One of the annoying things is that basic attacks also have a chance to stun you. So if he does attack into you when you're doing your heavy attack, he can stun you and interrupt that. And that can really make for an unlucky play, which is one of the more annoying aspects of this fight. Now, below 55%, the collector's special attacks cannot miss, be evaded, or be auto-blocked. They also ignore 25% of the opponent's block proficiency. So of all the block damage you are taking, you're going to start to take more. But as far as his not being able to evade, miss, that doesn't really affect the fight too much. One of the things that for me felt like was the biggest advantage for Aegon is his ability to be unblockable and therefore attack into the collector's block and push him up to 2 bars of power, because that one is much easier to deal with. What you'll notice in this clip is that the time warp is going to expire, and then we push him across the 40% threshold, so it refreshes that time. Now, below 40%, he gains another buff, making him immune to bleed, poison, stun, incinerate, and power lock debuff effects. Now, because Aegon does get a lot of damage off of the bleed, that is disappointing, but you still do want to charge that heavy to gain those fury buffs so that your basic attacks can deal some big damage. And if you hit them with the special 3 or the special 2 still, you can still get a lot of damage off your special attacks. Something you might want to consider trying is saving your special 3 for a time where you would otherwise maybe die. For example, I go to throw a heavy attack shortly here to chain on and get some furies, but he evades it, and therefore he would have had the potential to, do a lot of damage to me. So right at the end of that, I just go ahead and throw the special 3 to prevent him from countering my missed heavy attack. And you can do this for several situations. For example, if you're going to be knocked out, if he even throws a special attack because you don't have the ability to take any block damage, then you can just throw that special attack to get a little bit of extra damage onto the end. And then once you get him down below 25%, the next buff he triggers is an unstoppable buff that triggers on a timer. So every so often it will trigger, and at least you can see the timer counting down, so you know and you can plan and prepare for that to trigger. But he becomes unstoppable and is more aggressive for 3.5 seconds. And it activates every 20 seconds. So you have to be prepared for that and back off temporarily when that does trigger. And you can see I do make a lot of mistakes in this fight. I do die a lot of times to the collector, mostly from being stunned, but I still was able to do the entire path with only 59 revives. So if you feel like your skills are similar or better than mine, then maybe that's a good judge of how much you will need to spend. But I did have several very annoying fights against the collector, especially in this lower phase where I didn't get that much damage off and I would get hit by special attacks, get stunned, and get knocked out pretty quick. And in the last parts of the fight, it does take a lot of things to keep track of. You want to be managing a lot of different things, like trying to knock him down at the start so that you can get rid of that time warp. You want to make sure you're pushing him to 2 bars, but also watching out for that unstoppable buff, which sometimes triggers randomly and other times triggers based on that timer. And you do want to throw some heavies when able. I found it best as soon as you bait out a special 2, take some of that block damage, evade as much of it as you can, go back in and throw a heavy attack, hoping that he attacks into you like that, and then get those 6 fury buffs, which really help to increase the damage that you deal with the special attack and with your basic attacks if you can get another combo in after that. And then the last buff that he gets is when he goes below 10%. And this is an interesting one that puts displacement charges on you as soon as you cross that 10% threshold. And at that point, the hits that he does against you inflict 2 stacks of displacement. If you block a hit and it's not well timed, it only puts on 1. But once you get to 20, you're immediately knocked out. And you can see these blocked hits from the special attack are giving me 1 displacement charge. And then when he attacks into me when I'm unstoppable, I'm getting 2 each time. And if you get to 20, then you will be instantly KO'd. So you do have to be aware of that, but there is not much you can do, or there's nothing you can do to avoid it. The last thing I want to point out is that in the later parts of the fight, you will not always go unblockable, but the great thing about Aegon is you still can do a ton of damage through the block because of the critical hits and the massive damage Aegon does when he is ramped up. But I hope this was helpful to give you an idea of what to expect, but you should expect spending the most revives on this fight. I spent a total of 14 revives just for this fight alone, and it's typically the most expensive fight on the path. But let me know what your thoughts were if you used another champion, or if you have any other tips and tricks to share in the comment section below. If you have not seen it yet, check out my playlist on the Abyss. I do have a mastery recommendation guide as well as a guide to how to prepare for your Abyss run. And as always, thank you so much for watching. Good luck, and I do hope to see you in the next video.